development. And last time we have the stage and the source of libido and the traumatic event and the fixations, the ways in which these traumatic events supposedly influence your life. And the child starts off in the oral stage of development, and the source of libido is sucking, and the trauma is weaning, and a person who's orally fixated might be an overeater or an undereater, or might be a gum chewer or a smoker, biting sarcasm critic, big talker, politician. The big mouth, opens mouth, puts foot in the mouth. The oral stage, then we have the anal stage of development, and the source of libido is the expulsion and retention of the feces, and the traumatic event is toilet training. And we have the anal expulsive personality, artistic, generous, philanthropist, person wanting to smear it or spread it all around, versus the anal retentive, the stingy, authoritarian, maybe cruel, maybe sadistic kind of person. Then we had the phallic stage, and that's where we were last time. And the source of libido is the genital stimulation. And the source of trauma is getting caught in a primal scene. And I was telling you about the Oedipal complex and the Elektra complexes. So in the case of males, and according to Freud, all males have an Oedipal complex. Freud would also say, there's no such thing as an accident. Every event can be explained. In other words, you can construct an explanation for everything that happens. So there isn't any such thing as an accident. So I misspoke and I said Elektra instead of every boy has an Elektra complex. That would be called a Freudian slip when I said that. And Freud would want to interpret that. There's no such thing as an accident according to Freud. Somebody forgets to do their homework, it wasn't an accident. If the dog eats their homework, it wasn't an accident. They put it there for the dog to eat. You get in a traffic accident, it wasn't an accident. Somebody made it happen. Forget something, that wasn't an accident, that was repression. All right, so in the Oedipal complex, every boy has an Oedipal complex. What does the boy want to do? He wants to kill father and marry mother. That's where we were last time. I told you the story about Oedipus. Oedipus the king, otherwise known as Oedipus Rex, is a great place. Somebody put it, I don't know if it's being put on campus. It's often done on campuses. These stories are thousands of years old. There's sequels, Oedipus the Colonus and so on. Oedipus was fated to kill his father and marry his mother, and he did. And Freud says the reason this story is so good and people like the story so much is that's what every boy wants to do, kill his father and marry his mother. Now, when the boy catches the parents doing it, okay, they're having sex, and he says, look, mother has no penis. Dad must have cut it off. And if Dad figures out what I would like to do to Mom, he would cut mine off. And this is called castration anxiety. That's part of the Oedipal complex. So you have to be afraid of Dad, because if Dad figures out what you're planning to do, Dad would, well, it really should be called penectomy anxiety, but people have trouble saying penectomy, so castration means removal of the testes as opposed to penis, but Freud It gets translated into English here as castration anxiety. Now the normal resolution of the Oedipal complex. So the resolution that works is that the child identifies. And we'll talk about the ways in which the child can resolve the Oedipal complex. The boy identifies with father and begins imitating father and pretends he is like father. And so he puts a dad's shoes on and marches around, or dad's a fireman, puts on the hat, you know, and he's a fireman too, like dad. And that way when dad sleeps with mom, he gets to do it vicariously by identification. So that's the normal resolution of the Oedipal complex. And I'll say more about why boys don't remember this later. Then in the Elektra complex, the girl realizes she doesn't have a penis and has penis envy. And the normal resolution, and mom despises mom for being inferior to dad, and the normal resolution is for the Elektra complex is to have a child. So the child becomes a substitute penis. Some people say, well, why do women want to get married? And the answer is so they can have a penis of their own, and they give it that way, but that wasn't Freud's joke. That was somebody else's joke. So the normal resolution, according to Freud, of the Elektra complex is to have a child that becomes a substitute for that. Then the child goes into the latent stage. And during the latent stage, society and morality operates on the superego. Remember, there's the id, the superego, and the ego. So we have the id, and it's biological, and it works on the pleasure principle. And we have the superego, and it has the effects of society and morality. And these two operate on the ego. This is how they get translated into English. Freud was writing in Vienna in German. The id, he used the word es, which is the neuter form of it in German, the it. The superego was the Über-Ich, or the over-self. The ego was the Ich, or the self. Sometimes ego gets translated as the self from the German. Now these are two subconscious. I put them up above here, even though before when I had the iceberg, this conscious was above here, right? These were working from below, but we can put these in a thought balloon. And the thought balloon is below the thought balloon that person actually has access. This is the conscious mind, and this is below the conscious mind. So in the subconscious mind, we have an id and a superego operating. At any rate, during the latent phase, it's the superego that's at work. And part of what the superego does is it causes repression, which means what's in the mind gets stuffed away in the subconscious where the person can't remember it anymore. All right? So according to Freud, the reason, if you ask boys, why don't you remember that you want to have sex with your mother, they say, oh, I don't remember it, probably because they never wanted to. And then he would say, you're in denial, but you've repressed it. That's why you don't remember it. You've repressed it. And then after the latent stage, you have the adult genital stage of development. Now, neo-Freudians criticize it. Karen Horney said everything's okay except she doesn't like penis envy. So feminists don't like this penis envy kind of stuff. They tell the joke. Well, I won't tell you the joke, you wouldn't like it. They have their own jokes. There aren't too many feminist jokes. You know, how many feminists does it take to change a light bulb? That's not funny. But they've got their own jokes about penis envy. if they told jokes. I have to figure out when I'm kidding. All right, so part of the problem is to explain everything. Now, if every boy has an Oedipal complex, it means they want to have sex with their mother and kill their father. How come they don't know this or remember it? Now, one of the things that goes on there are these defense mechanisms. People don't really like, people just didn't like Freud's theory. And Freud put himself in pretty good company. He said there have been 3 blows. The reason people don't like my theory is people, don't like things that criticize their self-esteem. Freud said there have been 3 blows to man's self-esteem. And by man, in the old days, people used to say man when they referred to people. Some people have objected to that. 3 blows to humans' self-esteem. According to Freud, the first blow was Copernicus. And what did Nicholas Copernicus do that injured man's self-esteem? What was Copernicus, what's Copernicus famous for? Anybody?
Earth was not the center of the universe.
Earth was not the center of the galaxy. I don't know if they had words like that. It was not the center of everything. See, there are these different theories. Back in ancient times, a long time before Copernicus, he's coming in, quite a bit later in the story, but 1,500 years, well actually even earlier, 1,700 years before Copernicus, we had people like Aristarchus and Hipparchus, and then Ptolemy, who I mentioned already, and Aristarchus said the Earth spins on its own axis and goes around the sun. So he had a heliocentric theory. So he's an ancient Greek from more than 1,000 years before Copernicus. He had a heliocentric. Helio meaning the sun. That the sun was there and the Earth was spinning on its axis and the Earth is going around the sun. So when you see the sun rise, it's because we're on a rotating sphere going to the east, right? Hipparchus had a geocentric theory. The Earth was at the center. And Hipparchus was another ancient Greek astronomer who made up star charts and tables and all kind of interesting, so that you could calculate where a planet would be on any given night. And Ptolemy summarized the work of Hipparchus and Aristarchus and the ancient Egyptians, taking data going back hundreds and hundreds of years before himself. Hipparchus had estimated the wobble. Some members of our Congress are just discovering about the wobble. The Earth has a wobble. The Earth spins on its axis, but that axis wobbles. One of our members of Congress just discovered it and said, maybe it explains global warming. And so a scientist had to explain to him, that wobble takes 24,000 years to go around once. It's not something that's happening like on a span of 100 years that we're watching the temperatures go up on the Earth. But he said, I just found out about, who knew about a wobble? It's a new thing, the discovery of the wobble. Well, Hipparchus knew about it thousands of years ago. Ptolemy wrote it up in a book that got translated from Greek into Arabic and back into Latin and brought back into Europe. Al-Majest, kind of a combination of Arabic and Greek. the greatest that got to be known long before Muhammad Ali, Ptolemy's book. Now Ptolemy didn't call it that. He called it like a treatise on mathematics or something like that. But it's known to the ancients as the greatest. And this book, The Greatest, had a geocentrics theory. He took from Hipparchus, and he thought about Aristarchus's idea that the Earth is spinning on its axis and going around the sun. And he said you could work it out that way if you wanted to explain things. So we could be standing on a sphere that's rotating and going around the sun. But if that's the case, given the size of the Earth, at the equator, we'd be going 1,000 miles an hour to the east. It's 25,000 miles around the Earth, that's about, and the Earth goes around once every 24 hours or so, that's about 1,000 miles an hour. Where's the wind? So Ptolemy said, it's simpler to say that the Earth is standing still, and that the Earth is at the center, and the sun is going around the Earth, and all the stars are going around, all the moon and everything's going around the Earth. All the planets are going around the Earth. Furthermore, Ptolemy said, if you throw something up, and we're going to the east, shouldn't it fall to the west? Because the Earth would turn out from underneath it? Now you people all know why that's a silly argument, but Ptolemy didn't know why. So he thought if you throw something up, it should fall to the west if we're going that way 1,000 miles an hour. So he argued against it. And these ideas around 150 AD. This book got translated into Arabic and then back into Latin. And the church got a hold of it and they said, this is right. And if you disagree with it, we'll torture you, we'll burn you at the stake. Because if people don't believe this, it'll be the end of the religion. We have to defend religion, we have to kill people to keep them from disagreeing with Ptolemy. They believed it so strong, the Earth stands still and everything goes around us because we are the creation of God. And so everything rotates around us. We're the center of everything because the center of God's creation, humans are the most important thing there is. And that was the idea. Copernicus comes in quite a bit later into the story at the time of the Renaissance. And he writes a mathematical treatise in which he says, he revives the theory of Aristarchus that the sun is at the center. And he realizes that the mathematics would be a lot simpler. And he gives you a much better mathematical account of the positions of the planets and the stars and so on, predicting eclipses and various other things. So Copernicus revived it. And Copernicus, people started liking Copernicus, especially, I'll tell you more about the story of Kepler and Galileo and some other people later. But this was a blow to man's self-esteem that the Earth is not the center. And everything doesn't revolve around us. And the second blow to man's self-esteem, according to Freud, was Darwin. And we'll say more about Darwin later when we get into the biological part of the course. So I'll have more to say about Darwin later. And what it was Darwin's message? That man is an animal. Basically, he was saying that because language and Europeans thought, you know, there's like the world of animals and there's the world of humans. And animals and humans are two completely different kinds of things, you know. And Darwin said, well, humans are just evolved from animals. So humans are just another kind of animal. That's the message that was upsetting to man's self-esteem, according to Freud. The blows to man's self-esteem. My father used to make the joke, he said, what? Man descended from ape? He says to me, you may be, but not me. So, third blow, according to Freud, to man's self-esteem was Freud. And he said, people don't like my theory because after Darwin, people could say, well, maybe man is just an animal, but man is a rational animal and different from the human, different from the other animals. Humans are different because humans are rational, and Freud is saying humans are not rational. They don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They're doing what they're doing because of the subconscious. And that was the objection to it, according to Freud. And he said in order to defend their self-esteem and the natural psychology, there are these defense mechanisms that allow you to feel good about yourself or protect yourself from understanding, from having the insight into what were the real motivations behind your behavior, according to Freud. So the first of them is denial. You want to have sex with your mother, don't you? No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. You're in denial. No, I'm not. So, denial. Then there's repression. Well, when you were a little kid, didn't you try to have sex with your mother and she had to turn you down? No, I don't remember that. So that's motivated forgetting. The idea of repression is that things that should be in your memory you've forgotten because you've repressed them by putting them into the subconscious. Then there's regression. So a child that is at one stage of development may go back to a previous stage due to traumatic events, returning to a former stage. There's the identification. And one kind of identification is displacement. So the child might identify himself with his father, and that way he gets to have sex with his mom when dad does. All right? Another kind of identification is displacement. That's where a little kid wants to kill father to marry mother, but dad's too big and tough, so pick on little brother. So why is Johnny, attacking little Jimmy? Well, little Jimmy is vulnerable, and the kid is identified, okay, instead of killing dad, I can at least kill this other one who's a little smaller. I can identify him. Famous statement by psychoanalysts that Hinckley, they still talk about letting Hinckley loose. Is he loose nowadays? Or they were talking about letting him go, but I think they put him back in jail for a while. He's the guy that shot Ronald Reagan. The argument at the time was he wanted to impress Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster he identified as his mother. Ronald Reagan he identified as his father. See, Ronald Reagan was kind of older, president of the United States, and makes him kind of father of the country, like Obama today. So Ronald Reagan was like a fatherly type. So he wanted to kill his father to marry his mother, to impress his mother, so he kills Ronald Reagan to identify. See, this is identification. Instead of killing his own father and marrying his own mother, he's killing Ronald Reagan to impress Jodie Foster. There's projection. That's where you identify your problems with other people. I'm not the one who wants to have sex with my mother. You're the one that's always trying to have sex with my mother. You're the one commenting on my mother's lost some weight and looks nice today or something like that. You're the one. No, I'm not the one. She's the one that wants to have sex with me. She wanders around in lingerie like Britney Spears. So that's projection. That's attributing your problems to other people. Based on the idea of projection, the Swiss psychologist named Rorschach and you can look him up online and see what actor do you think should play the role of Rorschach. So check out, you can just go into Google and you can type Rorschach images, click the images, and you'll see pictures of what Rorschach looked like, and you can figure out what actor you want to have play Rorschach. Rorschach's the Swiss psychologist who invented projective tests. And he's famous for the ink blot test. And what you do is you take a piece of paper, you put some ink in there, and you fold it over, and you show it to people, and you say, what do you see in here? You try to figure out what's in somebody's subconscious by what they see in the picture, see? That's the idea. Somehow you might discover what's in their subconscious by what they project onto the picture. These are projective tests. I'll say more about them in a bit, but here's a famous projective test. Psychiatrist shows the patient this. I have to have my Austrian accent here. Like our former governor of California. I'll be back. Isn't that what he said in one of his movies? Well, you don't know the movie. You got to see the classic movie, The Terminator, if you want to understand former governors of California. The former governor of California was Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was the governor of California, and an actor who played a role in Terminator, and in the first Terminator movie, he says the famous line, I'll be back. So you can look it up on YouTube. I'm sure you can find it. Arnold saying that. So the psychoanalyst shows this to the patient and says, well, so what do you see in this picture? And the client says, it's a naked woman standing up. Uh-huh. What do you see in this picture? That's a naked woman lying in bed. Huh? I think I understand your problems. I believe you're obsessed with sex. Me obsessed with sex? You're the one showing the dirty pictures. Right? So that's the idea of projection. You attribute to other people what's in your mind or your subconscious mind. Now Rorschach's figures are more complicated than this. He puts ink on there and makes a complicated spot. People say it looks like a butterfly. Aha, butterfly. We know what that means. Looks like somebody sat down. Oh, we know what that means. So that's the idea of projection and the projective tests that were based on it. There's rationalization. What is rationalization? Well, that's where the person tries to explain what they did in rational terms. So two people are sitting, at lunch. Psychiatrist, the psychoanalyst is there, and one of them reaches across the table for something and knocks over the salt shaker. And there's no such thing in an accident in Freud. That was done intentionally. So the psychoanalyst says, why did you knock over the salt shaker? And the person said, well, I was reaching for the bread. Because you're just rationalizing. What's the real reason? We know that this salt shaker, shaped like a penis, it's a phallic symbol. Spilling the salt, the word semen means salt. So apparently somebody checked it out. It tastes like salt. You're spilling the semen. You knocked over the phallus and spilled the semen. This is in the Bible. It's called the story of Onan. Read the story of Onan if you want to know how it comes out. You can also pay attention to our Congress if you want to know goofy interpretations of the story of Onan. Our Congress people have weird ideas about what that story means. The person says, no, I was just reaching, I was reaching and I didn't see it. Oh, you saw it. You did it intentionally. There's no such thing as an act. Your subconscious is trying to communicate with the world and tell us something. There's no such thing as an accident. No, it was just an accident. I was just reaching and I did. You see there was a flower in the way. There was this, they put this planter here. Who knew that it was rationalization. Then there's sublimation. And that's where you convert. You convert one idea, one subconscious idea, into a socially acceptable form. So somebody is going to send their mother a Valentine's card. Why? Because They want to have sex with their mother. But this is socially acceptable to send, dear mother, you know, on Valentine's Day, I'm thinking of you because you were such a good mother. That's socially acceptable, right? But we know what it really means, don't we? This is sublimation. Some football players on television, you know, they see the camera, hi mom, they want to have sex with their mother. This is the socially acceptable. They've sublimated it into socially acceptable form. Then there's reaction formation. What is reaction formation? Well, that's when some idea upsets your brain so much that the subconscious has to convert it into the opposite in order to deal with it. So somebody hates their mother. Why? Because they're so drawn to wanting to have sex with her that they have to hate her in order not to love her too much. And so right now it's very popular to talk about reactive affective disorder. The psychiatrists are explaining to the parents that the reason the child hates their parents, is because they really love them so much and they want to have sex with them that they can't accept that, so they've formed a reaction. So love is converted into hate in this example by reaction formation. These are the various, some of the various, and there are others and other terminology and so on. Now I want to distinguish the theory of Freud's psychoanalysis. The term psychoanalysis gets used in two ways. One, it gets used to refer to the, so the name Rorschach is associated with the projective test, so he was a psychiatrist and a follower of Freud in the early days. And as I say, I recommend looking him up and see who you think what actor ought to play him. So the term psychoanalysis, it gets used for a theory and a therapy. So if somebody is going to be psychoanalyzed, what they're doing is they go into therapy, they lie down on a couch, and they free associate. They go 3 to 5 times per week for maybe 10 years, maybe lifetime, at the cost of maybe $500 for a 50-minute hour. And the goal is to convert neurosis into normal unhappiness. According to Freud. So what do they do in free association? They go in and they just talk about whatever they want to talk about. So the person talks about something rather, and they say, you know, a funny thing happened. I knocked over the salt at lunch, and the guy sitting over there, he claims to have read Freud, and he told me it had something to do with the story of